Yo, how's it going, everybody? It's MacklinGaming, and it's been a huge week for Nintendo. They have announced their Switch 2 overall sales numbers for the first 4 months of the Switch 2's launch, and it is just mind-blowing numbers that I didn't really expect them to have for the Switch 2. You know, you thought the Switch 1 was going to way outsell the Switch 2, but I don't know, based on the initial Switch 2 sales, it looks like it could be close in the long run, but we're going to talk about that, as well as their second big news headline, which is they are shifting the focus of their first-party developers. So what does that mean exactly? Well, let's talk about it. So if you remember back in April when Nintendo released the Switch 2 Direct, it wasn't the launch of the Switch, just the reveal trailer. It was like a whole showcase for the Switch 2. And they announced the price, I believe, at the end, and it just threw everyone into like chaos. Remember all the sheep incels spamming in the chat, drop the price, like just not even understanding the current day economics and the economy and all that stuff. But clearly the price did not matter for fans of Nintendo and the Switch 2, because despite all of that anger initially about the price, the Switch 2 has sold over 10 million units. So let's go over to Polygon, where they say there's no question that the Switch 2 is the biggest console launch ever. And that's kind of hard to believe for me. Nintendo has released its latest quarterly financial report covering to the end of September. The numbers eradicate any doubt that Switch 2 is enjoying the most successful console launch of all time. Nintendo said its new consoles sold 10.36 million units in the first 4 months since June 5th. So in the first third of a year, in the first fiscal quarter, I guess they call it, 10.36 million units. And I didn't even know that was the most of any console ever sold. Like more than the PS5. I remember the insanity when the PS5 was launching during COVID. Like nobody could get their hands on one. I tried for months online to get drops for the PS5 and I couldn't. It was so difficult, and somehow that did not even outsell this. I think the reason for that was they just had a shortage of units. And I remember last year Nintendo saying, like, or at least people reporting, that Nintendo was just hoarding Switch 2. They were just making them and hoarding them and storing them away for the launch so they'd have enough units to surpass the bots and the scalpers and stuff. But I didn't really think that would work, but it did. You know, PS5 didn't have that down. Sony did not do that right back then with the console. But Nintendo really did a great job there of having enough units to sell at launch, and to sell for 4 months straight over 10.36 million. That's insane. So props to them for producing so many units ahead of time and getting ready to sell them around the world, and it paid off for them. Let's see, the PlayStation 5 sold 7.8 million during its first 2 quarters. Sony's fastest selling console ever, ahead of the PS4. So Nintendo Switch 2 beat that out. What about Nintendo Switch 1's release? On the backs of these numbers, Nintendo raised its sales forecast for the Switch 2 from 15 million to 19 million. It would make the Switch 2 the biggest seller over its first year, ahead of the Game Boy Advance of 18.1 million. I remember when the Game Boy Advance came out, I wanted one so badly. I ended up getting the ice blue, like translucent one, the like glacier one. Man, I wish I still had that. That kills me. I don't still have that one. Analysts who said that Nintendo's initial forecast was too conservative. Yeah. Pokemon Legends ZA will definitely sell even more Switches. They haven't even gotten to the holiday here. Let's talk about that. Like, they're going to sell so many more Switch consoles, maybe Black Friday, even if there's no sale on it. And then for the Christmas time season, in the holiday season, they're going to sell so many more units. But I just can't believe, like I keep saying, I can't believe the Switch 2 has sold the most units of any console ever. I think the only other reason I can think of is there's more people in gaming now than ever. And the Switch 1 was so popular, right? The Switch 1 sold over 100 million units. So out of all those people, you know, a lot of them wanted the next Switch, right? Not all of them, but a lot of them wanted it. So as we shift over to this other article here, it says 84% of console early adoptees were players who own the Switch 1, right? So this is going to be the other news headline that I wanted to talk about. But yeah, it's just crazy that so many gamers want the Switch 2. And even though it sounded like everyone online was like, oh, the Switch 2 sucks, it's way overpriced, that is just the vocal minority. You know, those are angry incels on the internet who are just mad at everything they see. So that happened to be the new hot topic to be mad at that day. Oh, the Switch 2 is too expensive. Well, clearly, most people did not think it was. In fact, it sold more consoles than any other console in history in the first 4 months. Crazy. So the second headline I wanted to talk about with Nintendo is Nintendo signals primary development focus shift to Switch 2. That's not great grammar and great wording here in this title, Tom. But Nintendo essentially has told their first-party developers to develop for the Switch 2 only here going forward. Now, there might still be some backwards compatible Switch 1 games, or some games, that launch on both Switch 1 and Switch 2, but for the first-party games, they're switching their focus to the Switch 2. Now, this is very, sudden. Not sudden, but it's very soon. Only 4 months into the Switch 2, and they're declaring that. They even reported it to people like, we are switching our focus. I don't remember Sony ever saying that about the PS5, They've been making games for the PS5 and the PS4 for almost half of the generation, for 5 years now. Games have still been coming out on the PS4, so they never really shifted to the pure new console PS5 only games. You're starting to see more of them now, but they did not shift over soon enough, at all. I remember people just being like, man, these games are being held back because they're being designed for the PS4 as well as the PS5. So I think it's really awesome for Nintendo to shift their focus to the Switch 2. Going forward, we will shift our primary development focus to Nintendo Switch 2 and expand our business around this new platform. So that just gets me excited for what the next Zelda team is working on, the next Mario Odyssey. Obviously, Donkey Kong Bonanza was that. We got Mario Kart World, and we're getting Kirby Air Riders from Sakurai. That's going to be a Switch 2 only game, I believe, and it looks crazy. I don't know if I'm going to buy it because Kirby Air Riders I've never played it. It's not my IP, it's not my thing, but it looks really slick and like it's going to run great on the Switch 2. We have Hyrule Warriors, Age of Imprisonment. Apparently that runs very smoothly on the Switch 2. So I'm thinking about all the next games that are coming out. Metroid Prime 4 Beyond is a Switch 1 game as well as Switch 2, so that one's not going to count. But I'm thinking forward, what's the next Xenoblade, or what is Monolith Soft working on? They've shifted their focus to the Switch 2 probably years ago, right? Nintendo's just telling us now, but they've probably had their team shifting the focus years ago, right after Tears of the Kingdom for the Zelda team. It could be 2 years into a new game on the Switch 2, already developing for that. So the rest of this article is just a bunch of numbers about, the player base and the units sold like we were talking about earlier. But I just wanted to bring up those facts. It's really exciting to hear Nintendo shifting their focus to the Switch 2. I want to see Switch 2 games that use the power and use the graphical ability of the NVIDIA graphics card inside the new Switch 2 to make these new games. And I just think it's so funny to the people that were hating on the Switch 2 at first at launch. It is just outsold every other console in its first 4 months. Can you believe that from the Switch 2? And what do you think about Nintendo shifting their focus? Are you happy that they're going to be making more Switch 2 exclusive games? Or do you still have your Switch 1? You're not ready yet to upgrade to the Switch 2, and you wish more games would come out for years to come like they've been doing with the PS4 and the PS5. Let me know in the comments. Let me know what you think about Nintendo's insane start to their new generation. And if you enjoyed the video, leave a like, subscribe. I appreciate you guys, and I'll see you in the next video. Peace.